Sir, should we be worried about the international appeal of the Indy 500 now Fernando Alonso ain't taking part?
Not at all, son. Why, we have great international stars, such as the Italian Marco Andretti.
He's from Pennsylvania, sir.
Or that other Italian, Alexander Rossi.
He's a Californian, sir.
Shoot, no, wait, what about that guy on pole?
Ed Carpenter, sir?
Yeah, him. He's from Paris, right?
He's from Paris in East Illinois, sir. That's not a foreign country.
It is if you're from West Illinois.
Hello, welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed. I'm Gareth. He's Zog.
Hello.
He's Richard.
Hello.
And we like driving. We like driving, boys, don't we?
We do.
But do we also like not driving? We've all had experience of cars with levels of autonomy, whether it's driver alert telling you that you're wandering from your lane, or whether it's an adaptive cruise control that stops you from crashing into the car in front, or whether it's a car that you can take your hands off the steering wheel and the pedals and let the machine do the driving for you. But Zog, you love all cars with autonomy, don't you?
Well, I think I have kind of quite mixed feelings about autonomous cars and self-driving technology, because on the one hand, it's amazing technology, and I think that's a very sensible way to develop personal transport, because when these systems work properly, there's no doubt in my mind that they will be much safer, much more efficient, much better in every way, apart from people having fun, than people at doing the driving. But the problem is the in-between period, and all the in-between stuff between a conscious, skilled driver being 100% in control of a vehicle, and a fully mature, properly developed, really good self-driving system being in control of the car. And there's a lot of messy grey area in between, which we're experiencing at the moment. I'm sure a lot of our UK listeners would have read the story of the driver who was charged with dangerous driving recently because they put their Tesla on autopilot on the M1 motorway in England, slid over to the passenger seat and let the autopilot do the driving. And they were arrested, and in fact I think they were convicted of dangerous driving, banned for 18 months or something.
But then, in that particular case, the bloke was being a dick.
He was, yeah.
Because he knows that he's not supposed to do that, because
Yes.
the system is not capable of completely taking control of the car. However, j'accuse Tesla as well for calling it autopilot, which makes it sound, we've all been on an airliner and the captain is wandering around down the aisle to go and use the loo or something, because the plane, I know he's got a co-pilot up there as well, they don't allow them to both leave the cockpit just because it's belt and braces. But the fact is, an autopilot on a plane can fly the plane without any human intervention, or even, sort of someone lightly gripping one of the controls to show you there's someone there. And in fact, I've been on planes where the plane's landed itself.
Yeah.
Because they can do that
They
as
can
well.
do that, yeah, and they can do it better than most pilots.
Yeah,
Also-
you wouldn't know, would you?
Autopilot works perfectly well in three-dimensional space up in the air, because the chances are you're probably not going to hit another aeroplane coming towards you inches away.
Yeah.
Whereas here on the road, on two-dimensional space, we're a bit more likely to encounter another 10,000 vehicles. The chance of that happening is far greater. I'm not criticising what we call autopilot. I'm not criticising autonomous abilities in cars.
You say it's more difficult on the road than in the sky. Yeah, it absolutely is.
Absolutely.
Much more difficult.
Well, this
Yeah.
is why. So the thing is, personally, I think autonomous cars, terrific. For all the people out there who hate driving, for whom it's stressful and it's a chore, and they don't enjoy it at all. It's just a means to get to their place of work, to go and pick their kids up from school, whatever it is they need to do. If the car could do it for them, I'm sure a lot of people would go, yes, please, where do I sign?
Particularly if they can spend the 20 minutes or whatever it is they're going to spend reading a book, catching up on some email, whatever it is.
I do like driving, but I don't like certain kinds of driving. I have to get from my place in North London around to West London quite regularly, to the Grand Tour office, driving often around London's North Circular Road. It's an awful road. It's an abysmal way to get around, particularly when it suddenly goes from basically being a motorway to being one lane. And so, of course, it always bottlenecks back, and there's a lot of queuing, and it's an unpleasant road to drive.
Yeah, and people are never nice. It's always one of those things where everyone's a bit sort of aggressive, but people don't
It's just,
we don't zipper, do we, in this country?
No,
like Americans
not
do?
as well as we should, no. And the other morning I had to get to work, and I didn't have a car. I'd left my car at the office, and it was all just aggro. I needed to get a cab. I just got an Uber over there because I was late, and I was like, it takes so long on public transport. to do that sort of dog leg through the centre of London. I'll get an Uber, it'll be fine. And I got a load of work done in the back of this Prius, driving around the North Circular. And it did make me think. I was like, well, now this is what we have in self-driving cars at the moment. They're not self-driving. There's a bloke doing it, and you're paying him. But you're getting some of the sensation because you're going, I'm doing the normal route that I do, but here I am on my laptop doing some work, and it's actually quite good. And I felt really productive. I was like, that was not a wasted journey.
Yeah, stress-free.
I've used some time that is usually sucked up with me having to concentrate on operating the car and not dinking into the back of somebody when you're in stop-start traffic. So that would be great. I would welcome that level of autonomy from an everyday car. It just takes you places that you can't be bothered to take yourself. Notwithstanding that you'd also then have to have an old car or something at home when you were going on a nice drive.
For fun. Yeah.
That's great. But the thing is, we are so far off that kind of autonomy where a car can just take you places that you want to go because you can't be bothered to do the driving. Because... they're testing all of these autonomous cars in places like Phoenix in Arizona, aren't they? And I've been there, that's where my wife's from. The roads are, by and large, on a complete gridiron pattern, and they're all straight. And it's very, very simple in the layout of the city.
Although not all of the self-driving trials are in places that are quite that,
But it's almost like they need to just get a baseline level of can the car sort of stop and go and turn. And it was where that woman was killed with the bicycle. It was in Arizona, wasn't it?
I'm not sure where that happened. But actually, that's interesting. The case where, as you say, the pedestrian with the bicycle was killed. And when you see the video, the in-car video, you sort of think, well, how could any reasonably good system have missed that person? Mm-hmm. And I certainly don't know. But I do know that one of the problems, and this may relate to that particular case, one of the problems that the designers of these systems have in getting the system to assess the world around it and what it needs to pay attention to and what might be a threat, or rather, what might be a thing with which you might collide that you therefore want to take care of. One of the more difficult things to deal with is people with bicycles, because sometimes they behave like vehicles and sometimes they behave like pedestrians.
Yeah.
And the systems that are looking at those objects aren't as good as we are
that's exactly
at figuring out that it's a person pushing a bike rather than a person riding a bike.
This is my point. These systems are incredible and the technology is fascinating and rapidly evolving, but it's simply not as good at nuance as the human eye and the human brain are going, well, now that's a person who's wheeling a bicycle, therefore they're behaving like a pedestrian. Not that we would sort of analyse it to that degree. You just go, well, they're not moving quickly because they're moving at walking speed, and, they're coming towards the curb, so they might step out. We're able to make these almost unconscious decisions about things based on our sort of prior experience and knowledge.
Right, and our shared knowledge as well. Yeah, well, Lyft are putting in 30 self-drive BMWs into Las Vegas, I believe, this month. And they are doing
that's just to test whether they can take drunk brummies around.
It's
vital capability of the self-driving car.
Where you going? I'm going to Las Vegas. Yeah, I'm going to do some gambling.
Incredibly sunburnt, drunk British people who've just lost all their money. And you'll be there as well. When you Zog on one of his trips to Vegas, seeking out self-driving taxis.
Lyft, or as I prefer to call them, Luft, because that's what it looks like if you read Welsh. The letter Y is pronounced of course. It's just like Luft to me. So Luft are doing this expressly to gather data. What they're doing, Richard, is trying to learn everything that humankind has learned in the however many years it is since we've been driving. We've learned from each other, we've learned from our own experiences. It's a self-learning system, and autonomous cars need to have better data. And as soon as we get cars which are sharing data almost in real time, things are going to start to improve over what we can do, I think. We're not there yet.
I think it's a very long time. It's longer than we give credit for.
I don't know.
But you think of the subtleties and the complexities. I'll give you an example. Just coming up here, I drove up here this evening, and there's a bit when you come onto the high street near here. Where you can go straight on, but then there's this weird little almost alley that cuts you off to the left that joins the same road.
Yes,
and it's a better junction than it's a better junction than to merge onto the main road.
Yes.
Because I was following Waze to see if it could get me here any more quickly, and it was saying just go straight on to the main junction. But I know you just spear off to the left and it's quicker and easy and stuff like that. I know that's not really a safety critical thing, but it's just this kind of sort of local knowledge. And also because you could see this junction, it just takes you to the same place because it's just a pub on an island in the middle, isn't it? So
exactly.
That's the thing. The software and the programming at the moment, certainly on the Waze version of things, just goes, it hasn't. Somehow it's missed the nuance of that little cut through.
Yeah, maybe.
And stuff like that. You just think, well, no, of course they'll crack it because
they will crack it.
Waze, actually what I should have done is given some user feedback and gone, That's a minor
Right,
point,
there you go.
guys.
Hang on, for those who haven't experienced Waze, explain what it is.
It's just sat nav on your phone. But
Yeah, but it uses input that we're all putting
Yeah.
into it ourselves. If you pass a police car on the road, you can say, yes, I've just
Yeah.
passed a police car, and everyone who's on Waze gets that bit of information.
Crowdsourcing. I wouldn't bet against self-driving systems getting better at anything that humans do behind the wheel, particularly if they're learning systems.
I mean, I don't doubt they will.
They're
It's just, I
going
think
to
it's
get
going to
better
take longer. The way it is at the moment, if you're not really sort of into cars, particularly into following technology and stuff, it's almost being made to sound like they're imminent, that we're going to have level 5 autonomy sort of next year. And there's absolutely no way. And it doesn't help, again, with sort of Tesla going, we have an autopilot system. And if you're a layman, you kind of go, autopilot, like in planes, so I could sit in the back while it... You know, it sounds more advanced than it probably is. And this is the problem as well. And I notice the press now seize on any accident involving a self-driving car under testing. That one with the Volvo that hit the lady with the bicycle being the case in point. But there was another one a couple of weeks ago with a Waymo Chrysler that they were testing. And, of course, the first thing they do is seize on it and go, self-driving car kills person. And that is terrible. And it all shows that it's in its infancy. But they don't put headlines are going, human-driven car kills 100 people.
People are doing.
But the thing is, this is
stupid,
prototype testing happening in public. You know, this is incredibly complex technology in its infancy.
Yeah, and it is being pushed quite aggressively. I'm not sure that it's being pushed too far too fast. I don't have a really good sense for how close we are to having properly autonomous cars on our roads. But I do wonder whether at this point where...
Can I answer that question? Ford say that they're going to have a car without a steering wheel for use in 2020.
And where do they expect to be able to put that on the roads? Where do they expect regulations,
to allow
legislation to allow that car
really
to be used?
Yeah.
Because I remember that line from the boss. We'll sell you a car without a steering wheel. And I was like, well... You could do that now; it'd just be really dangerous. But
or you just have a joystick, or you have a joystick instead of a steering wheel. That kind of thing.
Remember Saab were fanning around with that in the 80s?
Yeah, the little joystick. We like that.
Okay, but there is no way that in 2020 Ford are going to launch a self-driving car that's going to work in North America, Britain, the rest of Europe. Yeah. You know, that's
it will work in some areas
not going to happen.
very well.
But they may well put on sale some kind of car that doesn't have a steering wheel, but it's not going to be a fully autonomous car that's going to just hit the road and work everywhere. But the thing I was going to get onto is, as we're sort of saying that, you know, this self-driving technology is not ready for prime time yet. Yeah, we're still developing it. Uber has just stopped the trials of its own self-driving cars, or they've paused those trials because of an accident, and so they're not cracking on as fast as they could. Is this the time when Uber should be trying to sell us the idea of flying autonomous taxis, which they're pitching basically to American legislators and
probably safer than
rulemakers this week? They've got this mini summit thing going.
Safer up there with a bit more space around you than down here, I reckon.
It is,
yeah.
Well, actually, it is safer up there than it is down here. But
as long as your engine keeps you in the air, yeah.
Well, and I had a bit of a look into this, and it seems like probably one of the bigger problems for them is going to be the battery technology in this case. They do need significantly better batteries than we have right now to make these flying taxis work.
That's a good point, though, isn't it? If the engine gives out, that's one of the places where you want a pilot around at that point, because that's what they're trained to do.
Engage, auto-rotate.
And use their experience and their training to go, right, let's see if we can sort this out. And I don't know what computer protocols there are to sort of go,
It depends how it's staying up there.
My bodge would simply be, my suggested cheap, non-pilot involving bodge would be a parachute.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Or move away from four-rotor fixed blades to something more like a helicopter. That will auto-gyro down, will sycamore down. Helicopters don't crash.
I'll tell you why I don't think that's going to work. I think all of these designs that we're going to be coming up with for lightweight, autonomous flying taxis, they're just not going to have the spinning mass in their rotors to do the auto-gyro trick. Because,
little fixed blades.
They won't have the angular momentum.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They have to move away from that to something more like a helicopter. And
but then you can't make that a sort of a small, lightweight, autonomous vehicle. And I believe there are other reasons why these sort of multi-rotor designs are inherently safer than...
Mr. Wallace did it very successfully with Little Nelly and auto-gyro.
Not really the basis for an autonomous taxi, though, is it?
Technology's moved on a little bit since then.
And also, because if you start making them like helicopters, what you're really doing is just
building
the helicopter. And helicopters are really expensive.
Yeah,
I like the helicopter. I think
well,
it's built-in redundancy.
I love helicopters.
Go out to Dubai right now. You can call an Uber helicopter in Dubai.
Can you actually do that now? We talked about the promise of the little drone things, but
they'll send you I don't know what it is,
Uber
squirrel or something. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah. So there you go.
Terrifying.
Uber already have helicopters.
Well, and interesting,
and they're flown by people.
Dubai is one of the 3 cities that was mentioned by Uber as being the place where they're hoping to do trials.
Okay.
Coming back to cars, though, coming back down to ground level, I think you mentioned something earlier on which is absolutely correct. And Richard, you inferred this as well. Writing the software for a car that functions on American grid system roads is completely different to the lunacy of the merging 3-to-1 lanes in Britain.
I'm not sure that it is.
When you have to allow to be driving with Brits who are likely to go, no. Some people will go, no, after you, and other people will go, no, elbows out. In America, they zipper. Over here, we're far more unpredictable. And I think it's a more tricky thing to write for the UK than it is for the US.
I don't know. I dare say there'd be some sort of localisation.
Oh, yes.
For
but the thing
your
is, it's
software. But also, if the other vehicles that you're interacting with as an autonomous vehicle are also autonomous vehicles.
They're all talking to each other. No problem. But that's not going to be the case, is it? Particularly in the early days.
Transition period.
It's all going to get very messy. And I think actually it'd be frustrating if you're in the autonomous car, you suddenly notice that, because they will err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
As they already do. Now, I've driven 2 cars recently that have some self-driving capability, in inverted commas. I drove the new Nissan Leaf. You have to keep a hand on the wheel and all that sort of stuff, but it will drive itself and it will go stop-start traffic. It'll sort of take care of it. Unless you stop for a certain amount of time, and all of these have this as a safety feature, I guess, in case you've stopped and then you pass out or something, that you have to dab the accelerator or push a button on the wheel to start going again if you've stopped for more than a few seconds. That bit works really well. And it does take some of the aggro out of stop-start driving.
Yeah.
But once you start building up speed again, how easily the Nissan system, I noticed, was thrown off if it couldn't clearly see white lines on both sides. And on, for example, the North Circular in London, if you're in the outside lane, the white line by the curb has often disappeared or was never there.
Under
and
a pile of
just
rubbish
can't,
and stuff.
Yeah, it's under a load of, discarded shoes and shopping trolleys and things. So, it gets thrown off and it just basically abdicates responsibility. Then he goes, no, can't steer for you, sorry. And
you're on your own, baby.
And you go, oh, but you were a minute ago. And this is the thing. What I've realised is, the other one I drove was in the Volvo XC40. And in principle, you go, oh, how wonderfully relaxing on a boring commute to have the car take care of at least some of the stuff. But because you can't entirely rely on them to be consistent, they're not relaxing at all. They make me extremely tense.
Constantly expecting them
and
to step in.
And the Volvo, at one point, came up to some traffic lights with stopped cars, and I could see there were stopped cars from frigging miles back. It was a straight road, and it was like, it's not easing off, never mind braking, it's just going headlong. We're doing 40 miles an hour. It wasn't like it was sort of motorway speeds, but even so, 40 miles an hour feels frigging fast when things ahead of you are stopped, and by now you would have at least covering the brake and probably actually braking. And in the end, I just went, and I stepped on the brake because I was like, what point were you going to do something, car?
Well, okay, but I'm quite confident in saying that had you not done that, the car would have stopped anyway.
Well, I mean, okay. I'll tell you what, Zogger, I'll book you in.
I wasn't in that car.
I know. It felt a bit hairy to me. I'm sure it would. You're absolutely right. There's no way it couldn't have seen 3 rows of cars up ahead, stopped.
It was thinking about something else, wasn't it? It was thinking about a trip to IKEA or something.
It's deities. And then you go, no, braking, please, braking.
Driving in America, I've said it for years, if you drive in the States, you plug into the system. It's much more difficult to make a mistake in America. No, stop, wrong way. You can't drive down into a one-way street. It's much more difficult to do that in America than it is over here. That's one thing
that... Things are flagged up kind of more aggressively and clearly. And the system is... You're right, there's the more mandatory stop signs at junctions.
So cars with levels of autonomy can cope with that better. I think lanes are clearly defined, more so in the States than they are over here. But the real thing that any autonomous software would have to cope with is sharing a bit of road with, I don't know, Pastor Maldonado or Max Verstappen, someone who is unpredictable. You can make roads predictable, you can't make people.
If you're in London, kids on mopeds or cyclists in traffic are among the less predictable things.
And a lot of the way in which we cope with all that and how you read what's going to happen, read the situation, there's a great deal of eye contact involved.
Yes,
or at least the body language of the car. Which
we've all said this.
Read the body language of the car. And that's something that's built on, usually it's our years of driving experience. The longer you've been driving, the more you kind of go, okay,
that car hasn't signalled, but it looks like it's about to turn left.
Yeah.
Okay, but I would be surprised if the self-driving systems that are being improved at the moment, I'd be very surprised if they don't pick up on that same kind of body language.
If you're sharing data between cars, you'd be able to tell the wheel angle of the car in front of you. That will help.
But you don't want to rely on data sharing between vehicles. I would have thought, surely, but maybe this is a fundamental misunderstanding I have, but I would have thought that one of the things that you absolutely have to do in designing the software for an autonomous vehicle is to make sure that it will operate and will be safe, even if it's not getting data from other vehicles.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be autonomous.
But I'll give you an example of where I think the AI and whatever else has to go into these systems has to be really, really calibrated incredibly well to match what we're capable of as people. And it wasn't when I was even in the car. Yesterday morning, I was walking the dog. I came up to a pedestrian crossing, zebra crossing that goes across the side road. And I looked, it's a one-way street, and there was a Citroen C4 Picasso coming. And I looked, and I just thought, they're often driven by people who don't know how to drive. And so I'm going to assume he's not going to stop for this crossing that I'm actually now at the edge of with my big hairy dog. We're not invisible here on a bright sunny morning. And sure enough, he just sailed right through and up to the junction. So basically, I think as part of calibrating autonomous cars, I'm willing to help out here. I'll go in and I'll do them a list of cars driven by people who don't know what the frig they're doing.
Yeah. Vauxhall Corsa.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Taxi! You're getting...
Welcome to the Vegas Tron 5000. Your autonomous transport to any destination in Las Vegas. To begin, select your language. Your choices are English, Española, Brummy. You have selected Brummy, Aroitbab, Intit Ot. Oh, it's Ot. Too Ot for me. Any road, where's we going to today, moi love? You have selected that building with the Eiffel Tower on it. It? Boston.
Sniff Petrol! With Gareth Jones on speed!
Now, if you've listened to Gareth Jones on Speed for a few years, you'll know that we each have our own specialisation on this programme. Richard cares about nice old Jags and Land Rovers and used to love Rovers of the 1960s and the 70s and Chryslers of the 70s. That's right, isn't it? Is that your specialist areas, would you say? It's some of them, not all of them.
Yeah.
For me, it's Slade, Wales, Star Trek, Gilban, Lancia. That's about it for me, isn't it? Yeah, can't think of anything else. Did you say
Ford?
Oh, Ford. I didn't mention Ford. Yeah. Well, actually, I want to talk about Ford later on. I must remember that. But for Zog, he's a Renaissance man. You were talking about...
I'm kind of sort of quite good at a bunch of stuff, not really good at any one thing.
Well, I don't know, Zog.
I've got a lot of breadth.
You're the only one amongst the three of us who understands quantum field mechanics at a conversational level.
Quantum field theory.
There you go. See, I didn't even know what it's called. But you decided to look into that sort of thing and have a go.
I like to know how things work, and I do a bit more fixing of my own vehicle than either of you two tend to do, I think.
I barely do anything, because I'm lazy and incompetent.
I drive a Toyota. I don't need to fix it.
There you go. But I do like to understand how things work, and I like a problem that requires logical steps to solve and maybe requires you to make a thing to solve it, and it's very satisfying to have a project that involves building something or making something you don't quite know how to build at the start. Fixing a car is inherently satisfying. You start with a car that doesn't work and then it works. It's brilliant.
I sort of feel like that about cooking. Don't mind having a go at something and going, oh, look at that. I just made something new.
I just made an amazing plate of food. It tastes delicious.
But the thing is, I can't bear to do it with cars because if you make a right old mess of it, you just need a bit more seasoning. It's fine. So I think, now I've broken my car. You know, if you make a mess of a meal, you don't have to ring a professional chef and go, could you come round and sort this out for me? You just throw it away and start again or make something else. But when you break your own car or make the situation worse, which I feel like I would and have done, I can't bear that. I just get cross with myself.
But when you get over that terrible spell where you're kind of looking deep into the depths of the engine, into which you may just have dropped a tool.
I was going to say, at least once, I've been staring into the place where the spanner has just dropped and has not come out the bottom. And
that's
you're going,
a dark place.
Where is that now?
I think every time I've done any substantial degree of taking things apart in the engine bay to fix something, I always find at least one socket or little screwdriver bit or some tool.
I'm glad you're not a surgeon. I really am. Oh, that's where it is.
Yeah, but come on, look, even good surgeons, they leave stuff in bodies all the time. I'm just following proper medical procedure. I'm not ashamed.
So this whole last 3 minutes has been a way of getting to what I'm holding in my hand at the moment, because Zog has turned up here today with the most remarkable example of his resourcefulness. Let me describe it to you. Imagine a 1970s Bond bug coloured box. It's orange, right? The same orange that the Bond bug was signature colour in, or only colour it was available in. It is a polythene, what do we call that? Polyethylene poly? It's plastic.
Actually, it's ABS plastic.
ABS plastic box, about the size of, I don't know, 2 or 3 VHSs stuck. That's not going to help you. You won't even know what a VHS is. Yeah.
It's about the size of a wax cylinder. It's a house brick or a small box.
About the size of a house brick, yeah. And it's sitting on a home-constructed sort of ladder frame aluminium box girder chassis, which has been drilled for lightness.
There you go.
And made by Zog.
Did you do the drilling?
I did, yeah.
Amazing.
I hadn't really noticed.
If you've seen the picture for
As
this
you can
programme,
tell, I
you'll
got
know
a
what I'm
little bit
talking about.
obsessive about saving weight on this.
And the clue is what it actually is. I mean, it's tiny for what it is. It's got 2 terminals, one black, one red, at opposite ends of the box. Zog built it himself, and it is a car battery. You made your own car battery.
How much would you say that weighs? You hold it in your hand, how much would you guess that weighs?
I'd say that is less than the weight of a bag of flour. So what's that, 750 grams, less than a kilogram?
Actually, you're low.
Yeah.
The size of it may be tricking your brain. It's 1.2 kilograms. So,
okay.
Yeah, but there you go.
And what does a normal battery weigh?
Well, the battery that's replacing weighs 18 kilograms. So I've made myself a lightweight battery that weighs 7% of what the original battery weighs. Thank you. Yeah. I was going to say, how cool is that? I think that round of applause just demonstrates it's a pretty neat...
Can I ask?
And it's... Yeah, go.
What's in the box?
Okay, well, that's a good question, Richard. Just a little bit of a backstory. Why have I built myself my own car battery?
Why, so have you done that?
Yeah, why have I? Well, I just kind of got this idea in my head that I wanted to replace my big old lead-acid car battery with a lightweight lithium-ion modern 21st century replacement. Because I've been reading a bit about lightweight lithium-ion batteries, and they're increasingly popular, particularly on high-end cars. And if you're prepared to pay about £1,700, you can buy one from Porsche.
Yeah.
I think you can get one for your McLaren for about £1,300.
Yeah.
You can buy third-party lithium-ion batteries, usually several £100s. The point being that why would you pay several £100 for a car battery? Because that's a lot of money for a car battery. Silly money. Well, people pay that because they are much lighter than the lead-acid equivalent. And if you want to save a bit of weight, replacing a huge lump of mostly lead is a pretty good way of doing that. Yeah. But I didn't want to buy an expensive battery, and having read on a couple of forums where people had talked about the construction of batteries, I thought, well, I could have a go at that myself.
And how much did it cost?
It cost me about £100 in bits.
Wow.
What is in the box? To answer the earlier question, there are 8 lithium iron phosphate cells arranged in pairs. So I've got 4 sets of twin lithium iron phosphate cells, which arranged in series gives me 13.2, 13.6 volts, that kind of range. So just the right voltage for the car, and that will deliver enough starting current. It has a lot less reserve capacity, of way less amp hours than the battery it's replacing, but I don't ever sit with the engine turned off running the battery down, so that doesn't hugely worry me. And as well as those 8 cells, which are the core of it, I mean, that's what's basically replacing the other battery, there are some electronics in there to manage the balancing of the cells.
Where did you get those from, and what are they?
Either Amazon or eBay. Judging by the number of off-the-shelf balance and protection boards designed specifically for lithium iron phosphate and other types of lithium ion batteries that you can get, there are obviously a lot of people putting together DIY lithium-ion projects.
How did you know? Was there a plan you were able to follow, or you made it out of your head and there was enough metal left over to do another one?
I found a couple of quite good videos on YouTube by geeky tinkerers who were building themselves.
Oh, I love that show, Geeky Tinkerers.
Actually, it's not.
No, hang on a minute.
And I found some good threads on a couple of forums. It's not terribly hard to figure out, in the sense that, in the end, if I just connected those cells to those battery terminals and stuck it in the car, it would have worked. Although you wouldn't expect the life of those cells to be all that long, because if you don't balance out the cells that you connect in series, if they're not being charged in particular equally, If you have imbalances in voltage between them, that will lessen the life of your whole battery assembly quite dramatically. So you need to have a balance. You need some balance and protection stuff in there.
It's something that I didn't know about having to balance these batteries until I was listening to something about Tesla and a US company. They're one of these tear-down companies. They dismantle cars and sell the data about those cars to other car manufacturers, and they've just done a Tesla Model 3, and the guy from the company was on this podcast talking about it, and it's a mixed bag. I mean, he says sort of mechanically and bodily it's a bit of a show, but the electronics apparently are sensational. He was raving about them. One of the things he said was their guys who know about batteries said they'd never seen such well-balanced battery cells in an electric car. He said it was immaculate from an electronics point of view.
Well, so how have you balanced these?
Well, I've just bought a balance board and wired it up as you're supposed to wire it up. Simple as that.
Right.
This is Britain's Tesla standing next to you.
Yeah, you just made a load more of these.
Nowhere near. Well, yeah, I'm not guaranteeing that this thing is going to be massively reliable. I've basically replaced a very well-proven, reliable, solid bit of technology that your car absolutely needs with something that I've cobbled together myself. Some people might think that's not the smartest thing to do. If I needed my car to be 100% reliable all the time, I would stick with the lead-acid battery, at least until I tested this a lot more thoroughly.
But it does strike me, and I was thinking about this only the other week, that the battery, the conventional car battery as we know it, feels incredibly archaic. It feels like a really old-fashioned piece of technology that hasn't evolved with the rest of the car. Because they're so heavy and so big, and they are just lead and then acid. What were we thinking?
You are absolutely right.
Stupid thing to lug around.
Right.
It's incredible that it's only now we're sort of starting to see, as you pointed out, for incredible cost, these lithium-ion batteries that Porsche and people will fit and sell it on the lightweight advantages of it. But it's also a packaging thing. They're much smaller, aren't they?
This is again much more.
3 VHS cassettes of tissues demonstrates that it's much more compact. I mean, you couldn't be standing there for the length we've been talking about, sort of 13, 14 minutes, with a car battery in your hands. You'd be wanting to put it down because they're ridiculously heavy.
I mean, we could toss it between. It's quite.
Yes. Don't do it.
Go on. Oh,
there you go. That was an easy catch.
Oh, me too.
It's a trust exercise.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Simon. It's a lovely bit of engineering.
Astonishingly light, considering it does the same job as something that's astonishingly heavy. And I just can't believe this thing. And also, I know this is particularly prevalent. If you're one of those people who has a car you don't use that much, or you have a second car that's sort of tucked away in a garage, it's almost inevitable that if you've forgotten to disconnect the battery or leave it on a trickle charger, the battery will have gone flat. Car batteries just go flat all the time. I've had various cars over the years that I haven't used very much for various reasons, and I always end up coming back to them and they don't start, and it's the battery, always.
And I believe it's the case that lithium iron phosphate cells, they should show less drop-off in their charge if you leave them for a few weeks than a lead-acid battery. And actually, I should just say, having described this as a lithium iron phosphate battery, I should just say a quick thing about sort of the chemistry of lithium batteries.
I was going to ask.
Which is, well, I could tell that question was burning.
Come on.
Lithium-ion batteries have got a bit of a bad reputation because they explode all the time, basically.
Now you tell me. Stand back, Richard.
We're just throwing it around like a...
You remember all those Boeing Dreamliners that were catching fire a few years ago?
Yeah.
Those were lithium-ion batteries, and if you've got spare batteries for your camera and stuff, you're not allowed to have those, I think, in your checked luggage anymore. Because airlines, they don't want lithium-ion batteries in the cargo hold. So lithium-ion, but there is some fire/explosion hazard associated with some lithium-ion batteries.
The Rimac electric car that my colleague Richard Hammond crashed in Switzerland burned for, I can't remember how long, 24 hours, something like that, maybe a bit more, because it had thermal runaway, where one cell goes and then it just ignites the next one, which ignites the next one, and it just becomes very hard to manage. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that, and I'm not claiming to have become any kind of expert on this, I'm just cobbling this together, and it's working so far, and I'm getting a bit better at this, but one thing I did learn is that there are various different kinds of lithium-ion chemistry, and for example, the batteries in the Boeing airliners were, I think, lithium manganese, and more recently this lithium iron phosphate chemistry has become available. It performs very slightly less well than some of the other lithium ion chemistries in terms of either energy density or power density, but it's much, much safer. It's impossible to get thermal runaway with lithium iron phosphate cells.
I feel better now.
So it's much safer chemistry. nothing to worry about.
It doesn't quite have the capacity of a big old 16...
It doesn't have anywhere near the capacity of the battery that I've replaced it with. In fact, it's actually got a rather pathetic number of amp hours capacity-wise.
What stopped you from matching the capacity of a lead-acid battery?
I guess mostly expense, because the 8 cells that I bought to make this up, which were the most expensive part of it, I think they cost me about £8 each, something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's for a single lithium iron phosphate cell that is a really cool green colour. It's fantastic. You love the look of them. But it's kind of like a D cell type thing, if you know. You remember that kind of size of battery. They're about that size. So 8 of those. Each of those has a capacity, I think, of about 3,000 milliamp hours. So if you wanted to make a 60 amp hour battery, you'd need 60... I mean, I'd have needed... I'm going to work this out.
I don't doubt it.
Work this out, okay. I think I'd have needed about 80 of those cells.
So that's probably a box about the size of a conventional battery.
It would have been about the same size as the lead-acid battery. And it would have been a lot more expensive. Yeah. And I'm quite happy to shell out £100 on bits to make my slightly cobbled together. But it works, beautiful. And it's a good Mark 1 battery.
Does it charge at the same rate and hold its charge in cold weather and stuff like that, comparable to a lead-acid, do you know?
Well, we're only about 2 or 3 weeks into the Mark 1 battery experiment, so I'm afraid I don't have much data yet. What I can say is that I do have some doubts about just how well it's charging, but I'm not quite sure of that yet. Cold weather, I expect it to not work so well in cold weather. However, we haven't had the cold weather yet, so I can't check. But I also expect that if I just turn on the lights for a short time before I start the engine, that will heat the battery up enough that it will then perform at its best, and it will turn out the considerable number of amps that it has to turn out to turn the engine over.
Do you know what I love about this?
I think I'll post some pictures of this on my Twitter account and people can see for themselves.
We have a picture of it in situ as well.
You can, and I might even do a little picture of the internals, because the reason that I have it out of the car today, because I have been running it in the car, the reason I had it out of the car today was that I was just trying to figure out how to strengthen the interior of it. Yeah. Because if there's one criticism I have of my work here, is that you've got this basically lightweight construction, and then you've got these big honking brass terminals screwed through the plastic top, which, of course, when you clamp big, heavy battery terminals onto them, the structure of the box flexes a bit, because it's just not big and beefy and chunky. Yeah. So it's kind of flexing and moving a bit. I'm just thinking that's probably not good long-term for...
bit of vibration at movement in the car. It's going to cause cracks and could get short.
Yeah, and if I've got some soldering in there that isn't super great and, I soldered it, so it's not going to be super great.
So if you don't get thermal runaway, you'll electrocute
I'll
to
get
death.
some other... Yeah. But I was trying to figure out how to put some kind of subframe in there to support the terminals.
Yeah. Made to a British standard, I think it is. Okay.
Well, it's made to a Zog standard. It's going to be... I've got a little subframe made of carbon fibre tubes with some aluminium kind of bracing at the corner.
That's the Mark II.
It's basically absurdly complicated. It needs to be, really, but hey.
Do you know what I love about this? You thought about it, so we didn't need to.
Ah, there you go. And it works.
Hi, this is Zog. Sorry I can't answer the phone right now, but if you leave a message, I'll get right back to you.
Hey Zog, it's the Canadian musical artist Grimes. You probably hadn't heard of me until I started going out with Elon Musk. So, I hear you're doing some really interesting stuff with batteries. And I wanted you to know I think that's super cool and hot. Maybe you want to call me sometime. We could, hook up and talk about cell balancing or whatever. It's cool. I told Elon we have an open relationship until he delivers my Model 3. So anytime in the next 6 years is cool. Laters.
Gareth Jones on speed.
Very impressed that Zog just spoke for 20 minutes about his battery. That's remarkable.
And I didn't even get on to all the balancing stuff, to how I used the diode. Okay, I'm going to shut up about the battery for a
I
while.
think you need your own podcast, so give it seriously. Which leaves only, 20 minutes left for poor old Richard and I to talk about what we were going to talk about on this show. And that is some of the cars that we've been driving recently, two of which I would imagine you've probably found very satisfying. If the two cars you've mentioned you've been driving, which one do you want to talk about first?
Oh, I came here in an Audi RS4.
You like?
Yeah, I do. I sound a bit reticent there, because I do. I really like it. I think it's a tremendous car, and I think it's also a pleasant car. It's a car that you sort of could imagine having. Well, I can imagine having it, because here's what I find interesting and admirable about it, is that, unlike some of those fast Audis, the estate as well, which all of those RS cars seem to somehow be more appealing as estates.
I know what you mean. I think there's something in the surprise factor
Yeah.
of something that looks so kind of, relatively speaking, boringly practical, that just goes so brutally fast. You know?
Well, that's
Nothing
it.
boring about an estate, young man. You mind your language in this house. I love the fact that Audi made estates super cool. Yeah, they hadn't quite been as cool as that until Audi started doing that.
Well, now, is it cool? I think it's cool for people like us, because we do go, ooh, practical, but also really fast. Ooh, yeah.
And there's a bit of added cool with the RS badge that it's a bit Q car. It's not.
Well, that's the thing. If I had one, I think the first thing I'd do is debadge it. Like an RS6 I saw last week parked outside my local corner shop, which was all black, completely debadged, to the point where I was like, is that an RS6? Because I was like, well, it looks like it's got the swollen arches, because it's all black and everything's black and it's dechromed and everything. You were like, so I can't, is it the light playing trick? No, it's definitely,
Basically, if it had been outside a bank rather than the corner shop,
Yeah.
you'd have thought it was a getaway car.
Exactly. Oh, it's a very good getaway car. The only thing that spoiled it, and I need to check if this is an option, because it's on this press RS4 that I've got at the moment, is this new thing Audi have started doing on RS cars, which is to write Quattro across the lower air intake on the front, or even on the, I think on this one, it might even be sort of on the kind of splitter bit below that. And it's really chintzy, it doesn't need it. And this RS6, this totally debadged, blacked out RS6, when I got around the front of it, it had that Quattro written on the thing. I just went, oh, well, that spoilt it. That's really killed it, because it's like everything else is so completely subtle and brilliant. And I love that, because I was driving around in the RS4 today, and it's this great sort of undercoaty grey. It's a lovely colour. And you can see more of the detail on it. You can see that it's got sort of box arches like a Quattro, except done in a slightly cack-handed way. I don't know what's going on with Audi design at the moment. It's bloody awful. There's a detail on the current Q7, which is, I think we know, is like nothing attracts awful people like a Q7. It's
Correct.
Just the worst dregs of humanity, but with money.
correct.
It's the new X5.
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
it is.
It is.
Yes.
And
QSL.
the new Q7, if you look at it, Audi have gone big on, Volkswagen Group generally have gone big on sort of the latest panel pressing technology, and particularly things like superforming, where they can do much more intricate shapes. And sometimes that's great and they can do interesting things with it. But it just means that it's given the designers carte blanche to start putting extra details on it. If you look at the Q7, there's a strip down the side, it's almost like a bevel. The body side comes up, and then it slopes in, and then it slopes in some more. This distinctive strip down the side of the car. But within that strip, have a look. There's a crease over the rear wheel arch, and then there's one at the front, quite a subtle one. It sort of goes diagonally across.
Breaking that crease. I've noticed that. I know what you mean. Like,
Within the double, sort of within the double curve.
And it's busy and it's
a bit
needless.
too much.
And it's unattractive. Because from many angles, it just looks like, in fact, there's
missed
panel
a bit.
damage.
Yeah.
It's been creased. Someone's just sort of, the bin lorry's dinked into it or something like that. You just go, why have you done that? Except that you can. Audi design has completely lost the plot, as far as I was concerned. The new A5 is a deceptively horrible car. When you start looking at it, there's a sort of soft, droopy front end. It's just, ugh. So that RS4, I think, is generally quite a nice-looking car. Overall, you go, yeah. If you debadged it and you didn't have Quattro on the front, you just go, maybe get away with that, just looking like a normal estate car, and then people wouldn't know that you sort of got this walloping power. But I don't know, the arches are a little bit crudely done.
Quite geometrical, isn't it?
Yes, that's the thing. Yes, a lot of angles in it, almost sort of like origami, where you kind of go, now, why is that? And, you know, they're showing off because they go, look, we can fold metal in ways that almost makes it look like you didn't think metal could be folded like that. And they go, well, yeah, I didn't think it could, but I don't want it to be. It doesn't look nice. So, I don't know. It's just very busy. There's busyness going on.
Next door neighbour but one, Afzal, delivers cars for a living, and so every now and again he turns up in a Huracan or a Speciale or something really amazing. Yeah, he has some incredible cars. And he had an RS4 a week ago. It was white, and it got my attention. All the highlighting on it was in black, and I thought, wow, this is, really quite subtle. I said to him, Afzal, what do you reckon? He said, Gareth, don't need any other car ever. It's better than anything I've ever driven.
Really? Well,
Yeah, that's why. It's just amazing. And that's all I had to say about it. And this is a man who's driven some incredible cars. Have you had much opportunity to drive this thing at pace yet, Richard? Is it an ultimate performance car?
No, it's not. Actually, it is really impressive. But, I mean, I'm being picky here because I think it's so good that you then start to demand more of it. Mm-hmm. And you're aware that it's a big, heavy car. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not massive, but it's an estate car. It's a family car.
It's not Lotus Elise. It's a big ship.
And that's the thing. Some of those old fast Audis used to be very susceptible to feeling sort of quite nose heavy, and then ultimately, if you really leant on them, they did understeer because the engine was so far forward in the chassis. And this is much more balanced, and it's got a Trixie diff, which again I probably should read up on because I'm not quite clear what's going on, but. Not only does it dig in on the front end, so you have to be being I don't know what it's like in the wet 'cause it's been bone dry this week, but certainly you'd have to be driving like a real penis to get it to lose grip at the front because it is very, very planted there. But then you turn in aggressively and the back end kind of goes, whoop, I'm coming along, to the point where you suddenly go, is it, what just happened there?
Quattro, sir, it's all doing it independently, isn't it?
Well,
it's moving
that's
the power
thing.
around.
Well, Quattro always used to be, original Quattro used to be quite sort of locked down, and they stuck the Torsen diff in the middle, and that made it. But it's now, the software and the fact it's got one of those active diffs at the back, I think, means they can play tunes on it. And it does corner in quite an aggressive way if you wanted to. Like it really digs in, but you could just lean on it, and it's extraordinary. But I couldn't quite let go of this sense that there's actually quite a lot of weight here. I think you could drive that car on track and you'd go, wow, I can't believe how much grip it's got and how fast it goes. And you'd do a few laps and then go, oh, I need a new set of tyres.
Yeah.
There's got to be a trade-off somewhere.
Yeah,
and I
just
have a feeling that it's one of those cars that's probably not very kind on its tyres because of all the incredible, clever tuning that's gone on.
No, that should protect your tyres, surely, because it's got each wheel operating at the right speed.
No, because there's just no getting around the fact that if you've got a couple of tons of metal doing a certain speed, all the energy of the accelerating and the braking has to go through those tiny patches of rubber that are on the ground. I mean, sure, the details of how the car is sprung and just the suspension's working, all kinds of stuff, that is going to have an effect on how the tyres are wearing. But basically, all of the energy that's going through that system is in the end going through the tyres, and if you've got a load more weight, you're just going to be wearing them a whole lot quicker and wearing out a lot of other things. There is no substitute for adding lightness.
Yeah, true enough. But the other thing about tyres is funny because I think also it's not just what you were saying, but I think if a car is set up well, so it maximises the amount of grip it can find from that contact patch, you can just lean on it more, you drive it more aggressively.
So you're
actually spending more time sort of very near the limits of grip of the tyres.
Heating up. Because my old Ford Cat, my very first car, was on 155 section tyres.
Yeah.
But it was so beautifully set up. You used to just drive everywhere flat out, and sort of going through roundabouts. It would four-wheel drift a little bit like an old Mini. It was a wonderful car. But I used to go through a set of tyres like less than 10,000 miles.
Integrale drivers used to get through them every 6,000 miles for the same reason.
I've got so much grip here, I'm just going to go absolutely pile through. But that's it. Something's got to give. And I have a feeling that RS4 will be the same. You're going around going, oh my God, I can't believe how much it clings on and how much speed you can carry through corners. How much for a set?
I can't believe
not again.
how recently I had to check. How recently I changed the charger.
Never mind the price of tyres. How many monies for the car?
I don't know. I
haven't seen that.
I need to look this up because I'm going to guess. I did look this up when I got it, but because it's got a lot of options on it. I think that one I've got with options is like 80 grand. But I think it's closer to 70.
I was going to say that was about 20 grand more than I was going to guess. But
yeah, that's the thing. And do you know what? Not only is Audi maybe losing the plot in design, but Audi interiors used to be extraordinary, where you sort of go, I can't believe they can do this for any money. In terms of car interior perception of quality, it's very easy to rag on Audis because they're often driven by cretins who can't drive properly. But you understand why people are drawn to Audis. The other thing car nerds like us would say, why are you getting an Audi A3? It's just a Golf. Get a Golf. But you sit in an Audi A3 and you go, oh, right, this is much nicer than a Golf. And I completely understand. Someone walks into a showroom and just goes, I'll have that, please. So you sort of think that no one can touch them for that sort of just immediate sensation of incredible quality and attention to detail. And this, particularly as an 80 grand car, like the dash top is it's got that sort of elephant's bottom texture to it. It's not very subtly grained, fake leather look plastic. They used to do so well. And this is the one thing. Otherwise, it is superb. I'm sounding like I'm moaning about it a lot because it's just because it's actually so good that you start sort of going, oh, but this. Then you start finding.
That you sort of
bits
start
that
to
aren't
find things that
perfect.
aren't. Yeah,
It's
sure.
got TFT dials, TFT instruments, and you can configure them in different ways. But I haven't found a configuration yet that isn't just a bit too busy. There's a lot going on. Like I'm slightly obsessed because I'm very boring. I'm slightly obsessed with the outside temperature. I love an external temperature gauge in the car. It's one of the things that always disappoints me about my Land Rover. It doesn't have one. And I got in today because it's been a hot day. I've been out today and I got home. And I was talking to my wife and she went, it's really hot. They were saying it's going to be like 28 or something. And I went, yeah, it's... Hang on a minute. I don't know what temperature it was when I was in the car. And usually I'll come in and go, you know how hot it is outside, dear? It's 17 today. Isn't that warm for February? Because I'm a very, very boring man. And I realised there's so much information and things because I've got it where it's got central rev counter, digital speedo in the middle, and I like that as a look. I think it's quite clean. But there's lots just business going on, logos and stuff on it. And then there's two little dials next to it which have power and torque output in percentages.
Oh, that's cool.
It's cool. But it's just actually
But it's also useless.
information. Exactly, what am I doing with this information?
Why?
You know, but again,
You
I'm
never
sort of
need to know that.
ringing my wife back, I'm on the
enjoying it.
M1 at the moment, dear, and you know I'm only using 7% of the available power. That's all you can do.
Rolls Royce, have they?
Yes. So
To get back to this-
so
this-
it's expresses Rolls-Royce express it the other way around, don't they?
Yeah.
Sort of,
Amount available, still available.
Yeah.
The thing is, you've just complained about there being all of these ways of laying out the controls and none of them work for you. I bet that if there was no choice about how that display was laid out, if it was just a dashboard, a TFT display, and there was just one option, you wouldn't have complained.
I probably wouldn't, but sorry, I'm just checking
But
the price.
it's just an interesting sort of aspect of, I think, how we...
Well...
Yeah, you know, you say that basically the car is so good that you're almost sort of trying to find fault with things.
Well, yeah,
And so because you've got a choice of all these different display configurations, none of those
That's the
really
thing.
work.
It's too much. It is too much.
Can
too
we
much
make
choice.
choices better than they can, having thought
well,
about it with the committee?
it's almost like that with adaptive chassis stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
Sometimes you just
yeah,
go,
yeah.
Just why didn't you just get it right? Get it right, one setting. And that's got adaptive. And actually, do you know what? Because this is one of the things that most impressed me about that car. And perhaps, again, it's expectation versus reality. I expected a sporty Audi to have a terrible ride. And actually, the ride's pretty good. I mean, it's not like an old Jag or something, but it's very acceptable. You could live with it every day in comfort mode. You put it into dynamic, and it's a bit jittery, but it's not awful. It doesn't make you feel like, oh God, I'm going to break my car every time you go over a bump. And it does tighten up the body control a little bit if you're really sort of hustling it about. So it's quite well judged.
But I think our expectations, we're slightly skewed towards the high end. I know you like a bit of a fat boy float every now and again, but that Hyundai I had, even in its N sport mode, whatever they called it, like you say, jittery, but it was still perfectly manageable. Bit harsh, but not terrifying. It just wasn't floaty car, but the things that car would do as a function of that was all the reward you needed. We've got to wrap this quickly, but can you give me 2 minutes on the other car you've been driving?
I'll save this for another time, but I had a brief go in a Volkswagen Up GTI for the second time. I've driven that car briefly twice now, and the second time I loved it even more than the first time. I think it's absolutely terrific. It's a really, really amusing little car, and for 13 grand. I have this thing about cars, how much of a car you can use. Now, I absolutely love that Audi, and I love it because it's such a great everyday car, automatic gearbox and softish suspension setting, cruise around town all day. It's just a car. It's great. And then you can drive it like your hair's on fire in the right circumstances, and it's really good at that as well. And my God, it's fast. 444 horsepower, and I actually thought before I checked it had more, because crikey, it gets a lick on. And its most impressive party piece almost is that you'll be doing, say, sort of 60 miles an hour, and you'll want to go past something, and then you're suddenly doing a lot more than 60 miles an hour, just like that.
You can just put it down through all those four wheels.
Well, that's partly it. Yeah, it just goes. But one of the things is, I think I said to you before we started recording, that if I had an RS4, there's a part of me thinks, oh, I would probably get into trouble, because it's a bit addictive just going effortless punch, just go, oh, I'll use a bit of my power here, and check it on my gauge. And you're off, and it's a bit much. I thought, I don't know. You want to use all of this car you've paid for. I've just checked the price, by the way. It's about 62 base, but there obviously are some options on that car at 80 grand. 62's okay, 80's not. What I liked about the Up GTI is that it's a reasonable price, and you could use all of it almost all the time.
So how much power does it have? Do you know?
The Up has 115 horsepower, I think.
Nice.
It's just enough. 3-cylinder turbo. Again, it's not a perfect car, but I won't bore you with. I'm going to borrow one.
You're smiling when you talk about it.
I know, I am.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely smitten to the
car,
point where I suddenly went, why have I got my Porsche? Why have I got a Porsche that, again, I can't use all of it?
Yeah.
It's a waste. I should trouser a load of change, buy an up GTI, and even if I'm just driving around on the North Circular,
a very sensible person might do that.
Well, the problem is,
Not
I'm going to do that. And first of all, there is a year now, pretty much, as I gather it, at least 10 months wait if you wanted to order a new up GTI right now. It's been a real hit for them. But the other thing is, as soon as I got back in my Porsche, I went, oh, what was I thinking? I love this car.
Yes, there you go.
I drove the Skoda Citigo a couple of years ago, which is, again, an up, not the GTI. And I think the whole theme of the film I made for Gareth Jones on Speed, the short video about it, was about managing your expectations and how much of a car you could use. And so I completely understand what you're talking about with the GTI. It just wanted just a little bit more, but not much more, because sometimes enough is exactly that.
Yeah,
enough.
it is. It's just it's quite intoxicating when you just sort of go, oh, I was made giddy by it. And also, it was a beautiful day when I drove it. I was out with Johnny Smith. We were shooting a video. It was a beautiful set of roads we accidentally found up in the...
And how much is the up GTI?
It's like 13 and... Well, it depends. I mean, there's a 3-door and a 5-door. I think the 3-door's under 14 and the 5-door is, I think, sort of like 14,250 or something like that. But for what you're getting, and it's quite well equipped as well. It's got everything you need on it, and Bluetooth and all that malarkey and aircon and things.
Yeah, little cars have lots.
It's one of those cars where you just go, I think it's quite a little gem and a bargain to boot. So yeah, but I'm going to try and borrow one properly for a week, because if it fits perfectly into my life, then
you might have to have one.
Well, except that I'm so impatient, I can't wait 10 months.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
You would have changed your mind 3 times by then. We've got to wrap this, but before we go, let me just talk about something I've been doing recently. I've been driving some glorious cars, very different to your up GTI and your RS4, but cars which gave me a huge sense of satisfaction. I've just made a film for a website, which I'll tell you about where you can see that in a moment. It was published on the 23rd of May. But it's a little short film which I made with Dave Vitti. You remember Comedy Dave from Radio 1? Top bloke.
Yes.
Came with us to Spa to the Belgian Grand Prix with Mercedes a few years ago. It was the first time I met him. And he makes great little films, and he's been making films for this website about cars, and they were making one about the Cortina. And Richard, you kindly mentioned to Dave Vitti that I quite like a Cortina. And so we spent 2 days filming Cortinas. Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 480, not the Mark 5, because there really wasn't one.
Were any of them grey Cortinas?
No.
So you didn't get to use the Tom Robinson song?
I didn't, no. We didn't have a Whiplash Aerial either. But we did use the Gareth Jones on Speed song I wrote called Ford Cortina, sung by Phil Cornwell, in the film. The second day we spent filming at the Ford Heritage Centre, and I was playing the song on my phone to the guys I'm working with for them to get an idea of it. And one of the guys came out from the office going, "Is that the Rolling Stones?" As well, it's the Rolling Roads, actually. It's me and me mate Phil. It sounds like the Rolling Stones. Yeah, well, that's the idea. It's meant to be that. He really is singing Ford Cortina. Did he just sing I'm a Dagenham Man? Yes, he did. Oh, can I have a copy of that? I made their day, and they made my day by noticing the lyrics and the fact it was the Stones. I didn't get to drive all 4 cars at great length, but I did drive the Crusader. That was like driving a modern car. I drove the Mark III 1600L, which is the car I learned to drive in, so basically full of tears as I was driving that. I drove the Mark II 1600, which was, of all the cars, just felt the most sorted. It felt like a brilliantly engineered, usable, sensible. No wonder the Cortina did well. It was so great. But the Mark I drove was a Lotus Cortina. Yes, I got to drive a Lotus Cortina, a Mark I Lotus Cortina.
This is the look of envy. This is what you're looking
even
at.
I'm envious of myself. I promise you. I never ever thought I did. Impossible to do a 3-point turn in, but what a joy. Yeah, exactly. What a joy. But the bulk of the film was about these other 2 Cortinas. One which was a super sport, basically a Ford Cortina Mark III, a 2-door with the 3.1 Essex block from the Racing Capri in it. Because Supersport used to build race cars for Ford in the 60s and the 70s, and they would build this car to order. There's only 2. I drove one of those. Oh, you'll see that in the film. And you'll see me driving the most glorious 1300 Mark II estate with tears in my eyes. Because that was the car my dad drove me to Spain and back in with my sisters in 1968, I think, on holiday. And in that moment, not only did I get to drive the car my dad used to drive, I kind of got to be my dad. And, you know, nostalgia in cars is really all about that. So please catch that film. You can get it at the Influx website, which is influx.co.uk. Enjoy. I can't wait to see it. I haven't seen the finished edit. I can't wait to see it. I should be probably tearing up.
I'm
as
looking
I
forward to
watch
seeing it.
It is remarkable. It really is. You've been listening to Zog and his battery.
Goodbye.
Richard and his RS4.
Goodbye.
And I was Gareth. We're going to leave you with a tune. This one's inspired by the recent work of Childish Gambino, or in our case, Childlike Topolino. See ya. I'll be in a Cortina.
We are Ford. We know what you're thinking. We are Ford. Mercury and Lincoln. We are Ford. While we earn, we are Ford. You unlearn. We are Ford. Built for the road ahead. We are Ford. We are in your head. We are Ford, aim for autonomy. We are Ford, credit means we got money. We are Ford, built for tough. We are Ford, one Ford ain't enough. We are Ford, Super Deluxe and GXL. We are Ford, Kia Vignale and E as well.
To send us an email, see pictures, get song lyrics, join our Facebook fan site, follow us on Twitter, or to find out about sponsorship opportunities, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!